Welcome to another deep dive. Today, we're heading to the Czech Republic to explore a case that's as chilling as it is baffling, the Kurim case.
It's a story that really highlights the dark side of human psychology.
Absolutely, and the lengths that people will go to manipulate and control others.
Exactly. And it all unfolds in this seemingly ordinary town called Kurim.
Kurim, you say?
Yeah, Kurim.
I don't think I've ever heard of it.
Most people haven't.
Yeah.
But this case would send shockwaves through the entire country and even beyond.
So how are we going to unpack this case today?
Well, we're going to be using a podcast episode called Case 223, the Kurim Case, as our primary source.
Sounds intriguing. So
Yeah.
what makes this case so unique?
It's full of these unexpected twists and turns, really. It all starts with a man named Edward Treddy.
Edward Treddy.
Right. He was just setting up a baby monitor, getting ready for the arrival of his partner and their newborn.
Okay. Makes sense.
But what he ends up seeing on the monitor isn't a nursery. Instead, he sees a live feed from his neighbor's house, and it's showing a young boy naked and bound in this tiny, dark room.
Oh my gosh, that's horrifying.
It's a parent's worst nightmare, right? I mean, to think that you're about to see your own child, but instead you're faced with such a disturbing scene.
Absolutely, it sends chills down your spine.
So Edward and his partner, they immediately contact the police.
And I'm assuming the police raid the house.
Yeah, exactly. They find 7-year-old Andre, the boy from the monitor.
Poor kid. It's hard to even imagine what he went through.
And here's where it gets really interesting. The discovery of Andre was just the tip of the iceberg.
What do you mean?
The family living in the house, the Moova family, they weren't what they seemed.
So who are the Moovas?
The mother, Clara, was a single mom raising 2 sons, Jakub and Andre.
Okay.
But they also had this 12-year-old girl living with them, Anichka, who they'd taken in as a foster child.
Anichka.
Yeah, and her backstory was just heartbreaking. She was supposedly orphaned, abused, and even battling leukemia.
Oh, wow. That's awful.
And Clara, she seemed so determined to give Anichka a stable home, even going as far as to try and officially adopt her.
So, did she succeed?
Well, there's a problem. Anichka didn't have any official documentation, no birth certificate, no records, nothing.
So how did they get around that?
Anichka had to undergo a whole bunch of medical examinations, to verify her age and stuff.
I see.
DNA testing, the whole 9 yards.
Wow, that's a lot to go through.
Eventually, the court granted Anichka legal status, and the adoption went ahead.
It sounds like Clara was genuinely trying to help this poor girl.
That's what it seemed like on the surface.
Yeah.
But, and this is where things take a dark turn.
Oh no, what happened?
Well, remember Anichka's doctor, Andrei Zanilov?
No, I don't think so.
Right. Well, he comes into the picture and recommends this re-education program for Clara's sons, Andre and Jakub.
Re-education, that sounds a little ominous.
It was anything but educational. The boys were taken to this remote cottage and subjected to horrific abuse.
Abused. By their own mother.
Well, not exactly by Clara herself, but she allowed it to happen. And here's the chilling part. Anichka, the supposedly fragile foster child, she actually participated in the abuse.
Wait, what? Anichka was involved in hurting the boys?
It's a truly twisted turn of events, and believe me, it gets even more shocking when we uncover who Anichka really is.
Okay, now I'm really intrigued.
You and me both. You won't believe this.
I guess we'll have to wait for the next part of this deep dive to find out more.
You got it.
So stay tuned, everyone, to hear the rest of this unbelievable story.
It's a wild one for sure.
We'll be back soon to untangle the rest of the Kurim case.
Can't wait. So, we left off with this big reveal, right? Anichka involved in the abuse of the boys.
Yeah, huge twist. Makes you question everything you thought you knew about the case.
Exactly. And as we dig deeper into Anichka's true identity, it gets even crazier. We start to see elements of Munchausen syndrome by proxy.
Munchausen syndrome by proxy. Isn't that where someone pretends someone else is sick or makes them sick for attention?
Right. And in this case, we're talking about Anichka. She wasn't a helpless victim at all. It was all a carefully constructed act.
So who was she really then, if not a 12-year-old girl?
Well, DNA evidence finally pointed investigators to a woman named Barbora Skrylova.
Barbora Skrylova. And she was pretending to be Anichka.
Yeah, crazy, right? Turns out she was actually 33 years old, not 12. This woman was living a complete fantasy.
It's mind-blowing, the lengths she went to create this persona. I mean, the podcast even mentioned how she starved herself to look younger, wore children's clothing, even shaved her head pretending to be a teenage boy at one point.
It's almost like she was trying to completely erase her adult self.
And for what? To be seen as a vulnerable child.
Seems like it. It really makes you think about the psychological factors at play here. What drives someone to not only fabricate an identity, but to actively participate in the abuse of others?
It's unsettling, to say the least.
For sure. And then there's that letter Anichka supposedly wrote after disappearing from the children's shelter. Remember?
Yeah, the one where she defended Clara instead of asking for help.
Right. That letter could hold some key insights into her mental state. Was it a genuine show of loyalty, or was it all just another manipulation?
It's hard to say. But speaking of Clara, the boy's mother, it's difficult to reconcile the image of a loving mom with the horrific things she did.
Absolutely. So how do we make sense of her involvement in all of this?
Well, the podcast mentioned that Clara claimed she'd been brainwashed by her sister, Katerina, and this fake Dr. Zanilov.
That's right. She essentially argued that she was a victim of manipulation herself.
So she was tricked into believing that these re-education methods were necessary to help Anichka and prevent her sons from being institutionalized.
That was her defense.
Yeah.
And psychological evaluations did indicate that while she was capable of controlling her actions, she'd been subjected to intense coercion and emotional manipulation.
Wow. It's a scary example of how abusers can exploit vulnerabilities and twist reality to get what they want.
Definitely. It raises important questions about culpability, too. To what extent can manipulation mitigate responsibility?
It's a tough one. But let's not forget about Katerina, Clara's sister. It seems like she was the mastermind behind the whole operation.
Oh, absolutely. She was pulling the strings, creating this persona of Dr. Zaniloff, fabricating medical reports, and orchestrating the abuse of her own nephews.
It's hard to imagine what could drive someone to such extremes.
It's a real mystery. Some speculate it was a lust for power and control, a need to manipulate those around her.
Maybe. But it could also point to some deeper psychological issues, something that warped her perception of reality.
Could be. It's a chilling thought either way. To think that someone could be so detached and cruel, especially towards children, her own family.
It truly defies explanation. Her actions, it forces us to confront the darkest parts of human nature.
No doubt. And it wasn't just Katerina who was complicit. Remember the staff members at her youth center? They were involved in the abuse too.
Right. They took part in tormenting the boys. It's a chilling reminder that anyone can be susceptible to these influences, especially in environments where conformity and obedience are highly valued.
That's a good point. The Kurim case really shows the potential for evil to lurk in unexpected places.
Even within a family, where you'd expect love and protection.
Exactly. It highlights the fragility of trust, the insidious nature of manipulation, the lasting impact of trauma.
But amidst all this darkness, there's also a glimmer of hope, right? The resilience of Andrei and Yakub, it really makes you think about the strength of the human spirit, right? To go through something so horrific and still be able to find a way to heal and move forward.
It's remarkable. And the podcast really emphasizes that healing is a journey, not a destination. It takes time and continued support to process such trauma.
And speaking of moving forward, what about the legal side of things? Did those responsible for the abuse face any consequences?
Oh, absolutely. The podcast goes into detail about the legal proceedings. Clara, Katerina Barbora, and everyone else involved. They were all found guilty and sentenced to prison.
Wow, so justice was served in the end.
Yeah, it's a powerful message that even in cases of such elaborate deception, the truth can prevail.
But it also raises questions about accountability and remorse. Right? Did those responsible truly understand the gravity of their actions?
That's a good point. And it seems like there were varying levels of remorse among the perpetrators.
Really? Tell me more.
Well, from what the podcast describes, Clara, the boy's mother, she seemed to genuinely regret what she had done.
She did.
Yeah. She admitted to the abuse, expressed remorse, and even made efforts to rebuild her relationship with her sons while in prison.
So it seems like she was willing to confront her role in this and seek forgiveness.
It does. It's an example of how people can change, even after committing terrible acts.
But what about the others, like Katerina and Barbora? Did they show any remorse?
Not so much Katerina, the one who orchestrated everything. She remained defiant, never fully acknowledging her part in the abuse.
Wow, so she just continued to live in her web of lies.
Pretty much. It's like she couldn't or wouldn't face the reality of what she had done and the harm she had caused.
That's disturbing. And Barbora, the woman who pretended to be Anichka.
Well, even after her deception was exposed, she still tried to minimize her involvement, even tried to blame the boys she helped abuse.
It's hard to believe that someone could be so detached from reality.
It really is. And it just goes to show that some people, no matter the evidence, may never take full responsibility for their actions.
It's a stark reminder that evil can hide in plain sight, even within a family, where you'd expect love and protection.
The Kurim Case is a chilling example of that, and it forces us to confront some uncomfortable truths about human nature: the potential for manipulation, the fragility of trust, and the devastating impact of trauma.
It's a case that stays with you, making you question everything you thought you knew about people and the world around us.
For sure, and it really underscores the importance of critical thinking, questioning what we're told, and being alert for signs of abuse,
Yeah,
especially when it comes to children.
absolutely. It's a lesson we can all take away from this deep dive. A reminder to be vigilant, to trust our instincts, and to speak up when something doesn't seem right.
Could have said it better myself. The Kurim Case is a story that will stick with us, prompting us to reflect on the complexities of human behavior and the importance of protecting the vulnerable.
Well said. And on that note, I think it's time to wrap up this deep dive.
Yeah, we've certainly covered a lot of ground today.
We have, from the shocking discovery of Andre to the unraveling of this elaborate web of deception.
And the resilience of the boys amid such horrific abuse.
Exactly. The Kurim case is a story that has it all: intrigue, deception, tragedy, and ultimately a glimmer of hope.
It's a case that reminds us that even in the darkest of times, the human spirit can endure.
And that's a powerful message to leave our listeners with. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the Kurim case. We'll be back soon with another compelling story from the world of true crime.
Until then, stay curious, stay informed, and stay safe.